I see the hand of God extending grace to Paul. Now let me explain. Paul's morale coming into Corinth would have been almost certainly extremely low. His ministry in Athens had not been productive to the level it had been almost everywhere else he had ministered. When he arrived in Athens, he must have been thinking, if God has been moving powerfully in these smaller cities and towns, I mean, imagine what's going to happen in Athens. Thousands are going to turn to the Lord. And when he was summoned to speak before the Areopagus, he must have been thinking, what a miraculous opportunity. The plan is right on schedule. The most important people in the city are going to turn to Christ. And then he speaks, and the crowd is with him. But when he gets to the resurrection, they turn against him and begin to ridicule him. A few believe, and Paul certainly invests in them during the rest of his time in the city. But there's no great gospel work that takes root in Athens during Paul's visit. No church is founded in Athens because of Paul's ministry there. That would happen later, but it would have nothing to do with Paul. Pretty much everywhere else Paul goes, he plants a church wherever he ministers, but not in Athens, that great, large, influential city. And one of the secrets of pastoring and full-time ministry is that the discouragement can be profound. You empty yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in the hopes of building people up in the faith and bringing people to Christ. And when you go through seasons where there seems to be no return from that, there seems to be nothing coming back from that emptying, it can be profoundly discouraging. I can only liken it to parenting, in the sense of loving your children, wanting the best for them, pouring your life into them, and then the pain when they say, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm going to go in this direction against all of your counsel. That grief and that discouragement and that concern and that sadness is a type of what it is like to care for people spiritually as a pastor in discouraging seasons. The highs are as high as parenting. The lows are as low as parenting. All the time. And Sunday's always coming. And as Paul deals with this discouragement, he's mostly alone. He travels to Corinth alone, where he finds himself not among the intellectual elite, affecting the philosophy of the city, but among manual laborers, humble craftsmen. Additionally, Paul's health is probably not great. His body had endured a lot in these past few years. I suspect Paul was in a very, very low place. But we know Paul. Is Paul going to stop? Is he going to take some time to rest and recover? Of course he's not. This is Paul we're talking about. He's relentless. He needs to rest and recover. He needs to be ministered to for a little bit. But Paul was never going to recognize that about himself, not as long as there were people who needed to hear the gospel. Remember what David wrote in Psalm 23, where he describes the Lord as a shepherd and says, "He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life." That's the CSB, but it doesn't get it quite right. The King James Version does. King James Version says, "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul." He maketh me lie down. The original Hebrew word is clear. It means he causes me to lie down. It doesn't mean he asks me if I would like to lie down. It means he makes me lie down. He makes the call that I need to rest and be refreshed, and then he makes it happen. Paul wasn't going to stop. Paul wasn't going to rest. He needed to, though. He needed to. And so the Good Shepherd made it so. The God of all comfort, who comforts the downcast, brought comfort to Paul. He took away Paul's finances so that he had to work a full-time job. And this gave rest to Paul's mind and to his soul. He provided Paul with fellowship, placing him in a shop with a couple who loved the Lord dearly. And wouldn't you know it, we will find out later that Aquila and Priscilla were incredible people. They will go on to travel with Paul and become pillars of the church in Ephesus. They will risk their lives for Paul and will be among his closest friends to his death. You think it was a coincidence that Paul ended up in their home, in their shop? Not a chance. There's the kindness of God. And so day after day, for a season, Paul would enjoy their fellowship. They would work together, and as they worked, they would talk about the Lord, talk about the scriptures, laugh together, pray together. And Paul's spirit was ministered to by fellowship with this precious brother and sister. He was ministered to. Because we need brothers and sisters in the faith. Do not ever underestimate the ministry that happens when men and women who genuinely love Jesus simply spend time together. There's something that happens that is more than the words in the conversation. There's something that goes on a spiritual level that revives the souls of those who love the Lord to be around others who feel the same way. Paul had no idea that he was investing countless hours as he's resting and recovering into a couple that will help him one day plant a church in the great city of Ephesus. It was just the Lord's providence. Paul was being ministered to, but without even knowing it, he was also raising future leaders the Lord had already selected to be part of future ministry.